The famine had exposed the company's greed to the world, but instead of retreating, they adapted. Over the next 80 years, they would swallow India piece by piece, not always with cannons, but with paperwork. By the turn of the 19th century, the company has learned an important lesson. Outright war is expensive, risky, and draws unwanted attention back home. There is a better way to expand an empire. Make the conquered pay for their own conquest and dress the whole thing up as protection. The architect of this new approach is Governor-General Richard Wellesley. His invention is called the Subsidiary Alliance. The offer looks generous on paper. An Indian ruler accepts a permanent British garrison inside his own kingdom for his own protection against rival powers, whether other Indian states or European rivals. In exchange, he agrees to fund that garrison entirely out of his own treasury, regardless of whether he ever actually needs it. He also surrenders control of his foreign policy. No more independent alliances, no more independent wars, no ambassadors of his own, nothing beyond internal administration of his own palace and lands. Rulers who refuse find themselves isolated, surrounded by neighbors who have already signed, cut off from potential allies, and eventually pressured into signing anyway, one way or another. Rulers who accept discover the true cost only later. Maintaining thousands of British troops, year after year, is staggeringly expensive. Treasuries empty. Debts to the company pile up, compounding faster than any local revenue system can cover. And a company owed money has a simple, recurring solution: take territory instead of payment, usually the most fertile and valuable territory available. State after state signs away its independence without a single shot fired. Hyderabad signs in 1798, among the very first. Awadh follows soon after, ceding roughly half its territory just to cover the cost of troops it never asked to fight a war with. A string of Maratha territories fall into the same arrangement over the following decade. Each ruler keeps his palace, his title, his ceremonial trappings, his throne, even his private wealth. What each ruler loses, permanently, is the ability to act as a sovereign state in any meaningful sense. By the 1840s, an entirely new tool sharpens the process further. Lord Dalhousie arrives as Governor-General in 1848 with a simple, brutal idea and the confidence of a man who genuinely believes he is modernizing India for its own good. Under what becomes known as the Doctrine of Lapse, if a ruler dies without a biological son, his kingdom does not pass to an adopted heir, whatever local law, custom, or centuries of tradition might say. It passes to the company instead. Adoption has been a normal, legally recognized practice across Indian kingdoms for centuries. Dalhousie simply refuses to recognize it whenever refusing benefits the company. Satara falls this way in 1848. Jatpur and Sambalpur follow in 1849. Then, in 1853, Jhansi, the Rani of Jhansi, Lakshmibai, pleads the case of her adopted son directly to company officials, sending petitions and appeals through every channel available to her. She is ignored at every turn. Her kingdom is annexed regardless, absorbed into company territory as if her son and her decades of loyal alliance with the company simply did not exist. She will not forget this. Nobody watching from the palace at Jhansi that year will forget it either. In 1854, Nagpur is absorbed the same way. Then, in 1856, Dalhousie reaches for the largest prize yet. Awadh, one of the wealthiest and most populous kingdoms remaining in northern India, is annexed outright, not through lapse this time, but through accusations of chronic misrule. The Nawab is deposed and exiled. An entire kingdom with its own deep cultural and religious significance simply ceases to exist as an independent state. By the mid-1850s, the map of India tells a story most Indians alive at the time can read instantly. Kingdom after kingdom, absorbed through paperwork, treaties, and legal technicalities rather than open war. But an empire this size needs soldiers to hold it together, and the company finds its soldiers exactly where you would expect. Indians. The company's army by the 1850s numbers over 200,000 men, spread across 3 separate presidency armies in Bengal, Madras, and Bombay. The overwhelming majority are Indian sepoys, recruited from villages across the subcontinent, drawn heavily from specific regions and communities considered by British recruiters to be, in the language of the era, particularly martial. They are trained, drilled, and equipped in the European style, disciplined into some of the most effective infantry in Asia, and commanded by a comparatively small layer of British officers sitting at the very top of every regiment. This army is the actual instrument of every annexation, every conquest, every subsidiary alliance enforced at gunpoint across the subcontinent. Indian soldiers fighting and dying under a foreign flag to expand a trading company's control over their own homeland, their own neighbors, sometimes even their own extended families. For decades, this arrangement holds uneasily. Then the cracks start showing. Sepoys earn less than British soldiers doing identical work, often stationed in identical conditions, facing identical dangers. Promotion above a certain rank remains permanently closed to Indian officers, no matter how skilled, experienced, or battle-tested. A sepoy can spend 30 years in uniform and still salute a British lieutenant fresh off the boat, half his age and a fraction of his experience. British officers, increasingly, keep their distance from the men they command, carrying a kind of racial contempt that would have seemed almost unthinkable a generation earlier, back when officers lived, ate, and often fought alongside their sepoys as something closer to equals. Religious tension compounds it further. New service rules threaten to send sepoys on deployments across the ocean, a prospect that, for high-caste Hindu soldiers, risks a loss of caste and ritual purity that no salary, no promotion, no promise from a British officer can ever compensate for. Missionary activity spreads more visibly through company territory year by year, feeding a quiet but growing suspicion, shared across religious lines, that conversion is the company's real and stated goal behind every new policy. And then Awadh falls. Thousands of sepoys serving the company come from Awadh personally, their homeland, their king, their entire regional identity, absorbed overnight by the same institution that pays their wages and gives their orders. By 1857, the company commands an army of over 200,000 men. Most of them are Indian, and most of them have reached their breaking point. All it would take was a single spark.